Okay, these are the video notes for Algebra 2, Section 4.5. This is the second video. So let's go over repeated solutions. When you have repeated solutions, if they repeat an odd number of times, so like if they repeat 3 times or 7 times, or if they don't repeat and only happen once, when it is an odd number of repeats, then that tells you that it crosses the x-axis at that point or that solution. Now, if it's raised to an even number of repeats, then it touches the x-axis at that point. So it like comes down and it's going to touch the x-axis and then bounce back up. That's what it means by touches versus going across it. Or if we're down here, it could come up and touch it and then bounce back down. Okay, let's explore this. So it says find the zeros and sketch a graph. All right, well, the first thing we're going to do if it wants us to find the zeros is set this equal to 0. And then to find the zeros, I'm going to solve using factoring. So the first thing I'm going to do is factor out a GCF. The GCF on this is -2. So let's take a -2 out. And you can write dividing by -2 if it helps you. That's totally fine. So if I divide by -2, I have x to the 4th. If I divide it by -2, I have minus 8x squared. Divide by -2 is plus 16. Okay. So now you look inside that parentheses and see if you can factor that further. That's a trinomial. So I'm asking myself what multiplies to 16 and adds to -8, because it's what multiplies to AC adds to B. I get -4 and -4. Now keep in mind the powers there are a little funky. So here's how I would do it. Because it has a 4th power, I would use my -4 as -4x squared. And the reason it's x squared is because this middle term is x squared. So that tells you these are x squared. Because combined, -4x squared and -4x squared make the -8x squared. That's why they must be squared, because this is squared. So then if we factor out what's happening on each row, I get x squared minus 4. So I have -2, and I have x squared minus 4, and I have x squared minus 4. Okay, those factor again. Those are both difference of squares. So x squared minus 4 factors to x plus 2, x minus 2, and so does the other one, x plus 2, x minus 2. Okay, so if I rewrite that, do you see that this x plus 2 and this x plus 2, they're exactly the same thing. So I can write it like x plus 2 in parentheses squared, because there's 2 of the exact same thing. And then I can do the same thing right here. See, this x minus 2 and x minus 2 are the same thing. So I can write it like x minus 2 squared. So this one is going to give me -2, and this one is going to give me +2. So it tells me, hey, my x-intercepts are at -2 and at +2. So I'm going to put a point there. Okay, so keep in mind we're just sketching the graph. We're not getting really specific. So the degree, the highest power, is even, and the leading coefficient is negative. And what that tells us about the graph is that it is going to be this shape. And so since I know that the -2 was repeated twice, you see how this power is 2? So that tells me it had an even power. So it was repeated twice. And remember that even degrees tell you, even powers tell you that it touches at that axis, it doesn't go through. So what's happening is I know it's coming up and touching there and bouncing back down and touching there and bouncing back down. The reason I know it's touching is because these 2 powers right here, remember what it said? It said when a factor is raised to an even power, it touches the x-axis. It does not go through, so it touches there. And that's what told me, hey, that touches, it doesn't cross it. Okay, let's look at this one. Let's try this again. So find the zeros, set it equal to 0, that's step 1. Then see if there's a GCF that factors. This has a GCF of x. So if you pull out an x, you have x squared plus x minus 6. Okay, now see if that factors again. So I am seeing that that's a trinomial. So what multiplies to -6 and adds to 1 is -2 and +3. So that makes x minus 2, x plus 3. So none of those are repeated. So this gives you 0. When you set x minus 2 equal to 0, it gives you 2. Set x plus 3 equal to 0, it gives you negative 3. So this is telling you the x-intercepts. So it has x-intercepts at 0, at 2, and at negative 3. Now, before we can draw, let's figure out the shape. So because it has a degree that's odd and a leading coefficient that is positive, I know it should have this shape. Now, the other thing I know is that because none of these were raised to an even power, so let's go back up here. The factor is raised to an odd power. They were all to 1. So it crosses the x-axis as those points. So all of these were to an odd power. So all of these are where it crosses the x-axis. It doesn't touch it and bounce back. It crosses. So what that tells me is it's going to cross right there and cross down through 0 and come back up through 2. And I don't know exactly how high this one should be. It could be up here, it could be lower, or how low this one should be. I'm just kind of sketching the graph, so it's not exact, but I know my x-intercepts are right there. I know that in behavior, the shape of it, and I know that it goes through those points, not that it touches at those points.